So let's do the review. While I do the review, I'm gonna have to, just keep on doing it. If anyone shows up, um, well, I'll have to keep on doing the review until I'm done. Alright. So, this game is usually put on the top of, top 10 greatest games of all time lists. Routinely, it makes it to the top of those lists all the time. And it really does deserve it. It's hard to say exactly why, though, because if you think about it, like, the real meat of this game is going through those dungeons and trying to kill stuff. Well, just trying to get through it. But those dungeons can be so frustrating and labyrinthian sometimes. They can be really infuriating, and by themselves, they're not really all that great. So it's really everything together that makes this game really special. The music, the graphics, the world that it created, and also when you take into account the time that it came out in. And also when you consider that all the subsequent games just really aren't as good as this game, with the exception of maybe Majora's Mask. This is the first Zelda game I ever played. It's the first Zelda game I ever owned, or played for that matter. And it was an amazing game. What really makes it amazing is just the non-linear nature of it. It thrusts you into a world, and it feels alive. I can't stress that enough, that the world feels real. There are people, there are characters in this game, and they don't feel two-dimensional, they don't feel hollow, even though there's no voice acting in the game. It somehow manages to make everything feel so authentic. And that's because all the characters and the world itself are so well designed. Nothing about this game feels lazy. Now, like I said, there's no voice acting. But that's kind of part of the charm of it. Now, this game came out on the N64, so the lack of voice acting has a lot to do with the fact of the limitations of the N64 itself. But ever since this game, all the other subsequent Zelda games followed in that tradition. I shouldn't really get into, whether or not that's a good idea. But it worked so well in this game, they decided to keep up with it from then on. They decided to remain, continue in the tradition of not having voice acting, because it worked out so well. This game was so good at telling a story that it didn't need any voice acting. Now, speaking of the story, it is kind of a cliche story. But the story, it's like, on the surface, it's just a go save the world kind of story. And if you asked me the details of what the story is about, I couldn't even tell you. Something about, stealing the Triforce or whatever. But the game manages to tell the story in such a compelling and interesting and charming way that you can't help but feel like it's good. And it doesn't feel obstructive. It's not intrusive. And it doesn't feel like it's taking, the controls away from you too much. Games that do that, I gotta say, Banjo-Tooie did that. There was 40 minutes worth of cutscene storyline in that game in the beginning. So you don't even get to control your character for 40 minutes or so. Because it just wants to tell you this story. It uses cutscene after cutscene. And it's so annoying because you just want to be able to control the game. So this game manages to do that. It manages to tell an interesting story, even though the story's cliche, without being too, in your face and obstructive. Now, with that said, there are some things about the story that I want to criticize. I know that this is. Some people say this is a children's game. It's not a children's game. It's a game for everyone. But even so, I really always wish that there would be a good romance in it. There's never been a good romance in any of the Zelda games. Um, and there's so many opportunities to do a good romance. You know, I'm not like the lovey-dovey, oh, I need to have romance in every story that I read or watch. But even I recognize that there are a lot of relationships in this game that could be explored, but yet the developers never explore them. It seems like such a wasted opportunity. You know, like with Malin or Zelda herself, or maybe some other female character in the game they could explore a romantic relationship with. But for whatever reason, like maybe they think, oh, you know, this game is for children, so therefore we can't do that. I disagree with that completely. There's so many other works of fiction out there where it's intended for children and there's romance in it. So I feel like, you know, they should explore that aspect of these games, at least at some point. They should have done it with this game. There was a good opportunity to do it, and they didn't. And that's unfortunate. And I really do think that this game could use a good romance, and it's no surprise that a lot of fan fiction does explore relationships between Link or other characters, because that's what the fans would like to see, obviously. Gameplay-wise, it's so rich. There's so much to do in it. And that's part of its charm. You know, there's a lot of side quests. The main quest is really fulfilling and enriching. But I will criticize a little bit about the obtuseness of it all. You really do need a guide in order to know how to do some things. Some things are just way too obtuse, especially if you played this game for the first time. Like, if you played this game for the first time, there's a lot that is different, too different, and you're unfamiliar with it. So you won't know how to do certain things. Like, you won't know, okay, a charge attack can hit a switch on the other side of a gate because it can clip through walls. You know, stuff like that. You know, in order to get one of the Skulltulas, you need to do that. But you wouldn't know to do that. Like, intuitively, it would never occur to you. It does this a lot, and, you know, that's okay for the most part because a lot of that is bonus stuff. But this game really does drive you to do a lot of that bonus stuff. And that's not a bad thing, you know. The dungeons themselves, I mentioned a little bit about the labyrinthian nature of them. Like I said, you know, some of the dungeons are just downright awful, like the water temple. That can be really frustrating, but really that's not the only dungeon that can kind of suck. A lot of the adult Link dungeons, the temples, a lot of them do suck. Some people hate the Shadow Temple. Personally, I didn't think it was that bad, but I know a lot of people hate that one. Personally, I think maybe the Fire Temple I didn't like. I can't remember exactly which one I didn't like. It was the Water Temple, and there was another one I didn't like. And mostly because, you know, just the level design's going all over the place. It's very confusing, and it's hard to understand. And when you realize that you're spending most of your time playing this game in the dungeons, you know, the dungeons should be a lot better. Still, somehow, the game is an amazing game, despite some of the rather crappier dungeons. But yeah, I do think that in order to beat this game, you do need a strategy guide. Some of the things where you need to know how to, like, it's not very intuitive to figure out on your own how to do some of the stuff. I'm trying to remember exactly what some of them might be. Like, maybe learning the Song of Storms might be a little obtuse. The other ones aren't really coming to memory, but yeah, there were a couple of things where you have to do something, and it's not the most intuitive thing in the world. So it's something to consider. Navi, you know, is largely unhelpful, and she's very annoying. It would have been nice if they improved her in some way. I don't really know exactly how, but they could have made Navi a little bit better and less annoying with the haze constantly. No one likes her. She has a reputation of kind of sucking. Graphics-wise, this is such a gorgeous game, and I think it holds up really well even today in We're in 2017. This game came out late 90s, whatever it was. Art style wise, I actually prefer this over most of the other games. And the reason is because this one's more colorful. Even like if you look at the graphics in this right now, they're pretty drab, and you know there's a lot of fog. That's due to the limitations of the N64. But even despite that, it's more colorful than Twilight Princess, which I was a little disappointed with the art style. It did. A lot of people didn't like Wind Waker because it went with a cartoonish, cel-shaded look, and then Twilight Princess went back to the, you know, quote-unquote realistic look, which isn't realistic at all, but more of just, it's not cel-shaded. But it went with desaturated colors, which I wasn't a big fan of. So in comparison to that, this game is more colorful, and I wish they would make more games that are in this style, with with more vibrant colors. Because of that, because there of a dearth of, you know, subsequent Zelda games with you know, vibrant visuals, I think this game holds up pretty well. And when you look at some of those fan remakes on Unreal Engine 4, you can see just how good this game could look, you know, if it were made with modern hardware. Music-wise, it's really, really great. The tracks in this game are so memorable. The forest theme is considered one of the best. The Gerudo theme, you know, these are just timeless tracks that just they never age because they're just so damn good. You could point out how the lack of voice acting is an issue, but again, that has to do with hardware limitations. And you know, this game gracefully makes up for it. You know, with the specific themes like the Zelda theme. You know, so each character still has a sense of personality, even though none of the characters are voice acted. So I love this game. I kind of debate back and forth which one I like more, this or Majora's Mask. You could argue that Majora's Mask improved upon this game substantially in a lot of different ways, and I wouldn't disagree with that. But this one, compared to Majora's Mask, this one does have a longer main quest, whereas Majora's Mask has a lot more side quests. So, you know, it's kind of like a pick your poison. What do you prefer? Do you prefer to do a lot of side stuff, or do you prefer to have a longer main quest? You know, so it just comes down to personal preference at that point. So I love this game. I don't disagree with it being on the top 10 lists of all time. It's a wonderful, awesome game, and I highly recommend everyone try it. And that's my review.